Good morning. Welcome to the Communications and Media Studies Career Day. This is a collaboration between the Career Development Center and the Communication and Media Studies Department. My name is Trish Schaefer. I'm the Executive Director in the Career Development Center. And throughout the day, we've invited alumni to join us for conversations about their careers in order to give you insights into different career paths, industries, and to get advice on how to enter and thrive in these fields. These sessions will be recorded, and our guest today is Jessica Cavallaro. Jess is a 2018 graduate from SJU with a major in Communication and Media Studies who works for CBN, Carter Burden Network, as Communications and Development Manager. Jessica has worked in New York at CBN for 2.5 years, and prior to this, worked as a producer for PodClass Podcast. While at SJU, Jessica was active in the Beautiful Social, the Student Union Board, and held multiple internships. Jessica, welcome back to Hawk Hill. I have a list of 10 questions I'll be asking you, followed by a 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A from our listeners. Again, this is a collaboration, so we've got students who are in class, we have faculty joining us, and we have students who are not in class right now who will also be invited to ask some questions. Audience, during the Q&A, you can either unmute and raise your hand, the raise hand icon, or throughout the session, if you prefer, you can post your questions in the chat, and we'll be sure to get those covered at the end. So let's get started. We're going to begin with a series of career-focused questions. So, Jess, could you describe your employer? What is Carter Burden Network? Your current role, your responsibilities, and what a typical day or week looks like for you?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you for having me. So I work for Carter Burden Network, which is a nonprofit agency in New York. We have 4 senior centers, as well as different programs such as health and wellness, arts and culture, volunteer services. So we're focused on, basically creating a better life for seniors 60 and older in New York City. And so within my role, I kind of wear 2 hats. I'm both in the communications team and the development team. And communications, anything from working on our website, doing newsletters through email, as well as a newsletter based to our members every month, creating flyers and different marketing support for all of our different programs, creating social media posts, doing research on, up and coming trends, as well as on the development side, more so creating the actual fundraising campaigns. So we have our annual gala every year in November. We work on that with my small team of 4. And we also do a lot of the board relations with that. So, working on their fundraising goals and also trying to gather more donors every year. And on the other side of that, I, do more of the administrative stuff in terms of actually processing donations, writing thank you letters, and getting all of those tax donations out. And then, on the event side, more of the actual day of things, getting prepared with all of the collateral and media that we do. And then, also the PR side, which we haven't really done much of that currently, but I wear a lot of different hats, do a lot of things. So my day-to-day can really be anything. We also, because we work with donations, I also have to do some of the finance aspects. So, learning a lot in that aspect, but really keeping track with everything and just kind of doing what needs to happen while also having these, major projects that I work on constantly.
Great. And so when did you know that this was the career path that you wanted to pursue, and what led you to that decision?
Yeah, so I come from a background where, both of my parents have worked in a nonprofit, social service agency for, my whole life. So I've just kind of been raised in an environment where it's good to work and give back at the same time. So I've always been interested in that kind of field. My parents both actually started in corporate jobs and transitioned to more of a nonprofit field. So I got to learn from them about what they liked for the pros and cons of working for a large corporation versus working for a smaller nonprofit. And I thought that my goals and my visions align more with working for a nonprofit.
Great. And so for other students, for listeners who are interested in a career path in nonprofit or specifically in the work that you do, what should they be doing to prepare? What is there a typical career path to reach where you are now?
Yeah, I think it definitely varies based on the organization and the actual size. Since we're so small, typically you'll find that development and communications are two separate departments. But because of, I'm an organization of under 100 people, and my team, development and communications, is 4. So I think you need to kind of figure out, what kind of nonprofit organization you'd like to go into, figure out the size of it, and then see kind of where you can, tailor your interests based on that. But I also think that it's not necessarily super important to have a development background if that is part of the role. I know those can be harder to find in terms of internships. And I didn't have any development experience going into it. So I think if you have a large enough of a communications background that you're interested in development, you can still manage that.
Do you think it's important to have previous nonprofit experience to get into a nonprofit?
I do, more so in terms of actually the organization that you're applying for. So when I was interviewing, they asked me what my relationship with aging services was, and I had done some volunteer work in that area, so they really had liked that. So I think yes, but it doesn't have to be professional experience. It can just be going out volunteering, knowing about what the actual field kind of looks like, and the population that they're serving. But I don't think it's necessarily necessary, but I think they are, like, the organization will look for some sort of tie that you have, because they want to make sure that you're invested in their mission.
Sure, yeah. So some alignment with their mission, something that reflects that in your experience, volunteer, that sort of thing. Great, okay. So what do you enjoy the most about your profession, and what is something that you wish you could change?
Yeah, so I love working for a mission-based organization. Before the pandemic, our offices are actually out of one of our senior centers. So I would actually interact with our seniors every day. We would go to events and take photos. And there's just really nothing better than actually being with the clientele that you're serving, and, hearing their stories, talking to them. And so I really am missing that so much right now. But I think working for a mission-based organization, you can't beat it every day. Like, we're doing so much good. I know without my role, without our team, we wouldn't be able to do half of the things that the organization is currently doing. So just knowing your importance in the place, I think is really fulfilling, and knowing, what you can do for it. On the other end, since we are so small, I end up doing a lot of things that aren't necessarily in my job description. So we've kind of become like the tech support of the organization, which is, it can be kind of tricky when you're dealing with tech anyway. But we're celebrating our 50th year anniversary this year, and a lot of our employees have been with the organization for a very long time. So I think sometimes people can get stuck kind of in their day-to-day, and I'm trying to bring new life, but it can be hard in tech circumstances for people to get on board with things. So we're a very heavy email organization. I would love for us to go to like Slack or something that's more efficient, but I know that that's very unlikely to happen there. So I think like things like that. Also, working with finance is not the best when you're a communications professional, but I'm learning a lot. So
That's great. Those skills will always come in handy. You never know,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What has surprised you most about your career?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is the level of responsibility and trust that's placed upon our department. Since they're, usually two separate departments where we do it all, and there's 4 of us, and just the level of trust that our executive director puts in us, and it's really amazing to see. And he's always so grateful, and just like my relationship with him is more than I thought that I would have in my position. Actually, like, speaking with him on the phone once a week has been great, and it ties you more to actually who you're working with. And I get to work with a lot of the different programs, all of the directors there, as opposed to just kind of in my lane. So I think just being exposed to all of the different programs within the communications realm has been great and has surprised me.
Right. That's a nonprofit for you, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
got to stay in your lane, but people will also pull you out because you have to get the job done. So it's a great experience. So I'd like to shift gears to focus on specific actions that students need to take. And I'll also take this opportunity just to remind everybody that if you have questions, you can go ahead and put them into the chat and they'll be shared during the Q&A. So I'm going to ask you about internships in a moment, but for now, what 2 to 3 experiences would you suggest students engage in while in college to help prepare them for entering this field upon graduation?
So I think that St. Joe's is incredibly lucky and has a very rare opportunity for students to participate in Beautiful Social. If you're interested in nonprofit world, you can't get any better experience than that, in my opinion. So I would say absolutely apply for that if you can. I also think, volunteering so you can get more ties to other missions that are out there. I know can be hard to find nonprofit jobs, so kind of anything that you can do to separate yourself from other candidates is great, and I think volunteering does that, and I think St. Joe's sets you up so well for that. I also think just not even though this is an experience, but just constantly producing, creating content things. I just think the more that you do that, the more you realize kind of what you like and how you can grow within a field by just trying different things. So those would be my experiences.
Right. And what was it about Beautiful Social that you feel set you up so well for your career?
Oh, everything. I mean, you get to, I worked really closely with Mike, and, we actually went into a prison, and, we were working for the Redemption Project, and it was truly amazing. It's not there's really nothing better than that. You can't learn that in a textbook. You can't learn that, just by watching a video. You're actually having these experiences that it changed me as a person, and it was a big reason for why I really was trying not to settle for some sort of corporate position, and I wanted to be really in the nonprofit world. But you also learn a lot of the more tangible things, like creating reports, working with other people collaboratively.
Great. Things you'll do in your job.
Absolutely.
There you go. Good. So how did your SJU education impact how you work and or the career decisions that you've made so far?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah. How did your SJU education impact you, the work that you're doing, and any career decisions you've made?
Yeah, I mean, basically what I was saying before, I think I took a lot of different communications classes, and I wish that my whole education could have just been communications classes, but you get these, taking religion classes, still taking sciences. I would be amazed at how often things were intertwined in these fields that are so far apart from each other. And I think when you kind of have those light bulb moments, you realize that you can kind of do anything, that everything will come together eventually for you. And maybe if you're, taking a certain class that is required of you that you don't want to be, you'd rather be in a communications class. I think you'll still learn a lot from it, even if it's just, history or things. There's just a lot of different background that you can have that you would be surprised at, what you can actually find useful for you.
Great. So I mentioned in your intro that you had multiple internships, and the truth is that you had too many to actually list. People would have fallen asleep by the time I got to the bottom of the list. So I wonder if you can talk about some of the internships you had, and maybe something that you learned at one or two or each of them that you've carried forward?
Yeah, I think I was really proactive. I wanted as much experience as possible. And I was really trying to find places that could utilize my skills, but also teach me a lot. Um, I had originally thought that I wanted to go sort of in a music industry background. So I did some of those kind of things. I worked at a radio station. So I learned a lot about like advertising and promotional marketing there. And then kind of realized like, okay, this isn't necessarily what I want to do, but I had a lot of more of the business aspect from those. But then I was doing more creative things. I worked for this just one professional who was basically like a motivational speaker. And she was a really powerful woman that would just kind of inspire me every day with her work. And I would just do, small like website things for her, promotional flyers, basically like giving her advice on design things. And from that, I kind of realized that it's important to like the people that you're working with in terms of being inspired from them. Um, and so that I think that was the biggest thing that I learned from her was how much people can inspire you in a professional setting. Um, let's see. I worked on a podcast within Steven's class, which was amazing experience also. I wish that I probably could have sort of a hobby, but I like a lot of niche topics. So, but I learned a lot of, more audio things, like actually creating things, coming up with ideas, which has really helped me in my current job, coming up with different fundraising campaigns and new ideas. You need a different slogan, a different topic every year to keep things fresh. So that really helped me with that. Um, I've done a bunch of things.
Yep, that's good. It's the variety. I'm sure you have a lot to talk about in interviews as well. So that's great. So as we come to the close of the questions that I have prepared for you, there's just two final questions. So what is something that you wish someone had told you when you were in school? And then second, what is a piece of advice you would give to students who are interested in your career path?
Mhm. I think I'm a pretty big perfectionist, and I sort of wish that someone could have told me that it doesn't matter like where you're going as long as you're interested in it. Like I said, I was originally interested in going to the music industry, and I kind of realized that I didn't want my hobby to become my everyday job. So I kind of came to that conclusion upon myself, but I wish that I had kind of talked it out more, with my peers. Um, but I also think just like don't be afraid to change your mind, to change your career goals. I think that's a really big thing. You don't have to put yourself in this box, almost like your first job, you might not like it that much. It's just kind of a way to get your foot in the door. Um, and honestly, trying to find a job is a job in itself. So getting prepared for that, I think, is important. But in terms of like, I've done a lot of the hiring for my organization since I have an assistant under me, and we've gone through a couple of them. So I think in the more concrete things, like things that I was looking for was, have a really good LinkedIn page as a communications professional. That's a really good way to market yourself and show that you can use a specific tool, since that's something that you'll, probably be using somewhat in your job. And also kind of having more of a creative resume, I think, is important, because as a communications professional, I think you're kind of expected to, have some sort of creativity, regardless if you're going into more of a business aspect of it. And I would get a lot of applicants who would just input all of their information through the Indeed platform. So I would get a lot of, resumes that were just not very personal. And I think like a LinkedIn and a resume are two really good ways that you're marketing yourself and showing, what experience you have. So those are my two things.
Yeah, that was a great tip. So now that you're sort of on the hiring side of things instead of the, applying side, what are on LinkedIn are there two, one or two tips that you would give to the listeners about what to definitely make sure they include and what not to do?
Yeah, I think it's important to, I mean, you can go into more detail on LinkedIn than you can in your resume. So I think having applicants that I would see put a lot of time and effort into their application, into their LinkedIn pages, I really liked that, because, sometimes you can't get everything from 3 bullets if you're really interested in someone. So having those extra, lines to be able to talk about yourself and your experiences there, I think is important. I also think since you can't fit everything on your resume, like I even put like the courses that I've taken, and I've found that as someone who's hiring, it's interesting for me to see the background that people have in their actual classes, knowing what their day-to-day schedule looked like as a student, since I was hiring a lot of people who were coming straight out of college. And for the most part, they're not going to have like full-time professional experience. So I think just trying to, I don't think there's anything wrong with too much information on LinkedIn. I think it's great for that, post links if you have samples of things that you like. I would say don't not have anything on there. I just think it's a great platform to show yourself, and I also think people can learn through there in terms of what your interests are, and I like to see that as a hiring person.
Great. And within your field, do you feel like students, if they have is it important or necessary for them to have either a portfolio or a website?
No, I haven't found that that's necessary. I think maybe in more of like if you're actually interested in going to a whole design field, but because there's so many hats in this position that I'm in, I don't find that it's necessary for someone to have a website or portfolio. If I'm really interested in someone, I'll ask them to send maybe some samples of things that they've done. But that's not something that I've looked for and other people in my position that I've seen.
Great. So we're all working remotely now, but prior to that, you were working in New York City. Is that correct?
Yes.
So did you or do you live in New York City as well?
Yes.
Okay. So can you offer students, students will come into our office and say, I want to work in New York, and they just don't quite know where to begin. So do you have any just general thoughts about living and working in New York City, what you like, what you don't like, or any tips for how to sort of move into a new market if really you've been based in Philadelphia?
The one thing is your commute is most likely going to be longer, and it's not going to be necessarily driving to work. I think that's a big difference. And I would also say don't look for an apartment based on locations that you're working for. Your work might change, but the place that you want to live, the neighborhood that you want to live in, I think is more important in that aspect. You might end up taking the subway for an hour or something, but that's just part of living in New York and working anyways. But I think you get so much out of the city. There's so many young professionals and a lot of different events and experiences that you can find here that is just priceless to me. I luckily have a lot of friends that have also moved to New York, so having that that support system has been great. But I also think if you're moving to New York, there are a lot of St. Joe's alumni here. Reach out to them. We're more than happy to help you in any way that we can. At least I am. So I think it's take the step if you want to. I think it's great for me. I can't imagine leaving New York. So
great. Sounds like a good fit, and I'm sure you're looking forward to it coming back to life again, right?
Absolutely.
And lastly, what's your dog's name?
Yeah, that's Oscar.
Hey, Oscar. Doesn't even know, and he's like, nope, this is how it goes now. I just lay around while she's working.
Sleeps all day.
That's
It's been
great.
great though. We both have separation anxiety from each other, so
It's going to be a real thing, I think,
I
when
know.
people do go back, when they do go back. So thank you so much. I think you had offered great advice. We're going to transition now to the Q&A. I'm going to take a look over at the chat to see if we have anything, and then certainly if people have questions that they want to ask, they can go ahead and unmute and raise your hand. So we have a question here. Do you have any suggestions for seniors who are enduring the application process?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the times I would notice, even with myself, that I wouldn't feel like I was qualified for a job and I wouldn't apply. I say just apply, unless it's something where it's like crazy amount of experience or looking for these very specific programs that you're using. Always apply, because you never know what applicants that position is getting, and maybe you're what they're looking for. So I would say try and put yourself out there as much as possible. On the other hand of that, realize that you're probably not going to hear from a lot of the places that you do apply. I know I'm guilty of it. It's just hard. Like I don't physically have time, as you know, a small department, to reach out to every person that applied. So realizing that you might never hear from organizations or companies that you're applying to. And it's also, yeah, it's a full-time job looking for positions. Just knowing that it can take time. It took me months to find something, and I got really lucky the position that I was in. But I almost went down a different route where I was gonna work in the Diamond District at an under the table job, doing like ridiculous promotional things, because I wanted to get my foot in the door. So I think just it can be good to wait for something that you like. I got really lucky, but also just, you know, taking the step to try something is great.
Great. And wearing your hiring hat, do you find that applicants do follow up with you? I mean, it's an honest answer. There's just not enough time in the day to reach back to every person who has applied. But do you find that people do reach out to you, and does that make a difference for you, as from the hiring manager's perspective?
Yeah, I would say that there's a small percentage of people that would apply. So maybe for a job that I posted, it would, you know, I'd get 200 applicants, and maybe 15 or 20 would, you know, reach out to try and follow up. I think a lot of those people were ones that actually uploaded things, as opposed to just inputting their information in Indeed, like I was saying before. So it was good for me to take another look at the application, and I'd say that's what that mostly did for me. But I also kind of trust my gut a lot, and if I'm not emailing you after the first time I look at your resume, there's a good chance I probably won't. But I have had a couple of times where I have reached out, because I've truly seen like the interest in actually working for an aging services organization. So I think if you can portray that, as opposed to just like, here's my resume again, I want to follow up with you. If you can kind of, you know, bring a personal aspect to it, if you're really, really interested in the job, then I would say, you know, go for it.
Great. Yeah, because there's a difference between wanting to be employed and wanting to work for your organization, and you can tell that through the materials that are submitted. So got it. Let's see here. So we have another question here. It's about burnout. This student has spoken to people who expressed that they sometimes get a little bit burned out. So is this something that you've experienced, and do you have any advice for how to combat this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this is a very, you know, uncertain time and challenging time. And I probably would be experiencing a lot of burnout right now, but you know, the population that's being hit the hardest by this pandemic is seniors. So I've actually been almost had to have forced to be more engaged and more you know, into these critical services that we're providing now, and kind of trying to shift focus. So not currently I have, but you know, I think it's only natural. There's better days and good days, but I think as long as you continue to grow, in your position, which I still feel that I am, I think that's a good reason to stay where you are. I think if you're really facing a lot of burnout, maybe you should evaluate why, like what the true stem of it is and how you can change that. And if that isn't staying there, then, figuring out what your next step might be. But it's only natural. There's days that I've been like, this is the worst. Like, I don't know how to even like go through this right now. It's just there can be a lot of things that, personal things that can impact your work as well. And I think just if you figure out where the true stem of it's coming from, you can evaluate where you need to go professionally.
Great, thanks. I'm going to scan here to see if anybody has any questions in person, whether it's students or faculty. Shot here. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions unless someone's moving here. Stephen, go ahead.
All right, I mostly wanted to say hi, Jess. Hi, Jess. It's nice to see you.
You too.
For other people, I'm Stephen Hammer. I'm faculty in Comm. I'm going to ask a question that I asked our last person in our last session, and it's a super selfish question from a faculty perspective. If we were to say, Jess, we need you to develop a class that we don't offer. What's a class we should offer or could offer that would have been helpful to you? Whether that's like more specific in terms of skill or otherwise, what would be a good class for us to offer to fill gaps that we don't see?
Oh my gosh, that is too good of a question. That's so hard because I feel like you all are constantly, evolving the curriculum and coming up with new classes. Okay, let me think about it. That's so hard. I feel like, honestly, like comparing myself to other communications professionals, like my communications career or communications education at St. Joe's prepared me so well for everything that I was doing. The fact that I could learn things from, creating a report to, doing audio for a podcast, creating videos, like there's a lot of things that I think maybe it's not even what the curriculum is, it's that students just need to get out of their comfort zone more. If they're not really excited about something, like maybe they will be if they try it and really learn about it. Oh, that's such a hard question.
Sorry and thanks. But no, that's good. I think you took advantage of a lot while you were here, Jess, and that's a really good example for other people.
Okay, I'll get back to you.
So Jess, what's next for you? Are you thinking at all about, the next couple of years and where you might be heading?
I try not to. I try to take it day by day. I'm honestly really happy where I am right now. And I mean, the pandemic has only made it more increased, like my passion for the organization, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, which is honestly crazy for an organization of our size, and just seeing the growth of it has been great. So I mean, I'll be in New York. That's probably all I know right now, but I want to stay in the nonprofit realm.
That's great.
Sure.
Looks like we have a question from Mike Lyons.
Hey, I saw Bill had his hand up too, so I think Bill's right behind me. Hey Jess, how you doing? I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, like from a professional perspective, how COVID has impacted your work, because you work with seniors, and I'm wondering, like, if you found yourself doing things, from a communication perspective or just any perspective, because of the pandemic and how much it impacts the folks that you work with or work for. So that's one question. And then secondly, I'm wondering, there's this big talk as things are improving now of like, do I go back to an office at some point? And there's some people who won't, you know? And I'm wondering how that conversation's going among folks that your peers and your company, your organization, about continuing to work from home, or if there's some kind of 50-50, 70-30 thing that folks are talking about. Just curious.
Yeah, we've had to, pivot a lot in terms of our services. We're offering all of our classes through Zoom, but of course we have a lot of things that are tangible, like sewing classes or guitar, that it's, our seniors don't have access to a sewing machine or an actual guitar, so there's things that we've had to kind of pivot. And obviously the amount of people that are utilizing our services has become a lot more small, but we've been trying to utilize technology in the biggest way that we can. Obviously the biggest thing facing seniors is food insecurity, and that's been the hardest thing through the pandemic. Not having these congregate meals for them, not being able to deliver meals to those who are homebound. So we've been working a lot. We're funded half by the Department for the Aging, so they kind of give a lot of the insight into what we can and cannot do. But we've been doing, daily calls to all of the seniors, wellness checks, trying to provide the services that we can. We also have started these broadcast calls, since a lot of our seniors don't have access even to a laptop, an iPad, a smartphone. So having things just through, their landline telephone. So we've been, trying to come up with new things all the time that we can do. But it's been really hard, and we've actually luckily seen a big increase in fundraising the past year because of that. And we shifted from having our traditional in-person gala at this big hotel with 300 people and a nice event with a 3-course meal, to just having a grassroots online fundraising campaign. And we've seen a big increase in people who are actually more interested in just getting a video from a senior, a testimonial, detailing their experiences right now and how our organization has helped them a lot. So it's actually been good in the event sense, since we can probably go forward and not start to have these big events anymore, and just kind of utilize the fundraising dollars in different ways. I think there's a lot of burnout with a lot of these galas, and we're even seeing a lot of virtual galas now. So we've been trying to figure out what to do with our 50th anniversary year to try and keep people engaged in the communications sense in that way. So I hope that answers the first part. And then the second, it's hard, I think, because a lot of our employees are considered frontline. When we can actually start to serve the population again, it will be more of those employees who will actually be in person. Whereas since I'm not physically at our our headquarters location, we're out of a senior center, I might not go into the office until it's able to have full capacity, because we've actually been really great at working from home. Like, our executive director has used us as the epitome of how to work from home, basically, since we've been able to do everything we've needed. But it's also like just physical senior centers, like the government has been looking into more like air filtration systems, how to involve more PPE and more sanitation, and like the budgets that will actually incorporate all of those things that they're going to start requiring. And that just in itself, to get that money for those kind of things, is going to take a while, and it's going to take away from other things that we're providing. So I think our organization is focusing more on how we can reopen in like the safest way possible before we can let all of our employees come back. That's where our focus is right now. Like, my husband works for Squarespace, and that's more of a corporate organization, and their very much like they keep pushing back their start date. Originally it was going to be January, now it's June, and they're very much like, you know, we're not going to force anyone to come back to work. When you feel comfortable, you can. And I think I'm seeing that from a lot of, you know, my friends and colleagues as well. So
That's great. Bill, did you have a question?
I just wanted to say, like Stephen, I wanted to say hi and to say how great it is to see you and to hear how wonderful you're doing and how you're loving your job. Excuse me, your job. I remember talking with you about it and you showing me their website and just how passionate you were and how interested you were in getting the job there. So it's really wonderful to hear what you've been doing. Just sort of one question. I can't remember what position you started with, but I was wondering if this is where if you were still in the same position or if you've sort of moved around in different positions in the organization. It's been 3 years, I think. And maybe
Yeah,
you touched on it. I had to pop it in and out at the beginning to deal with my kids a little bit, but I was just wondering, you know, what your trajectory inside the company has been.
yeah, so I actually have had 3 positions since working here. So I've been promoted twice, which has been incredible. And like I said, if they value you, they show you, and that has been super apparent. So I actually started as a development administrative assistant, and that was more of just kind of the actual administrative tasks, you know, kind of with a little bit of the creative things thrown in. And then I was promoted to communications and development associate, so I would do a lot of my other positions, but then I would have my old position, someone working under me, which was a big thing, you know, learning how to train someone, and delegating tasks. And then they promoted me, you know, to manager because they wanted to make sure that I felt good here, and they wanted to make sure I felt like secure in my job. And just that, you know, they appreciated everything I was doing. So that was great. And learning how to train someone over Zoom. You know, we've had a new assistant. I haven't even met her in person yet. That in itself has been an experience. But so I've moved around a lot, and I've been really lucky. But I think if you do a good job, like you will be rewarded in that sense.
That's great. It's so wonderful to hear how well
Thank
you
you.
do. I think great.
Well, I will say that my experience with people who get promoted is that it's not really luck. It is your hard work that's being recognized. So congratulations on that. That's terrific. So unless the students are holding out and just wanting to be the very last to raise their hand or ask a question, it seems like we are perhaps coming to a close here. So please join me in thanking Jess for joining us today, providing such great insight into your career, the ins and outs of working, and you know that insider's view is always so terrific. So we're grateful for your time, Jess, and we do hope to see you. Like quite literally, we want to see you back on Hawk Hill. We're looking forward to seeing people again. So Jess, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us today.
I also just want to say, if any, you know, students want to reach out to me via LinkedIn, I don't know if there's like a link I can send people or whatever, but like I'm super happy to help any alumni in any way that I can. I know that was really impactful for me when I was a student.
That's great. Well, you're definitely on LinkedIn, right? So they can find you there.
Yeah.
For sure. That's great. Awesome. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you.